Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. We are here to announce that a grand jury has recommended charges against former Philadelphia Police Officer Eric Ruch, Jr. in relation to the fatal shooting of Dennis Plowden, which occurred on December 27th of 2017, very shortly before this administration came into office. Those charges are first-degree murder, third-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, which is a homicide charge, and possession of an instrument of crime. At present, Eric Ruch remains innocent unless or until he is proven guilty in a court of law. Former Police Officer Ruch was fired by the prior police commissioner, Richard Ross, some time ago. According to this presentment, Eric Ruch killed Dennis Plowden while on duty by firing his gun directly at Plowden's head as Plowden sat on the ground with his left empty hand raised and clearly visible. I mention that because the bullet tore through the fingers of that left hand before it entered Plowden's head. According to evidence presented to a grand jury, Plowden looked dazed and lost on the sidewalk. He had just stumbled from his car following a high-speed crash and appeared to be trying to obey police commands given by police officers at the scene at that time. According to the presentment, the sequence of events leading up to the fatal shooting of Plowden spanned less than 2 minutes and 19 seconds, following Ruch's radio call from an unmarked police car asking to run a tag on a mover. The tag on the white Hyundai that Plowden was driving was good until July 2018, according to police dispatch. After Plowden pulled over briefly, he drove off, striking the open door of a second unmarked police car. The two unmarked cars, along with two marked police vehicles, pursued Plowden at a high rate of speed until Plowden's vehicle struck three parked cars, spun around, and finally stopped after striking a pole. According to the presentment, both of the Hyundai's airbags deployed, and Plowden, the driver of the vehicle, appeared to trip before falling to the ground outside of the vehicle. A loud and chaotic scene ensued, marked by car alarms and officers who had been in pursuit yelling commands such as "don't move" and "show your hands." Within 6 to 8 seconds of arriving on the scene, former Officer Ruch shot Plowden once, the bullet passing through his raised left hand, wounding 3 fingers, and traveling directly into his head. Plowden was pronounced dead the following day. The 4 other officers who arrived at the crash scene before the shooting took defensive positions in and around the Hyundai and the 2 unmarked police cars. None of them fired their weapons. It is indisputable that Plowden did not have a gun or any other weapon that night. Indisputable. A person identified as witness 1 in the presentment testified to having known Plowden for 20 years and never having known Plowden to carry a gun. As a result of consideration of evidence in this matter, the 30th Philadelphia County Investigating Grand Jury has recommended the charges that this office has brought. They are murder of the first degree, murder of the third degree, voluntary manslaughter, and possession of an instrument of crime. Former Officer Ruch was arrested by Philadelphia police when he turned himself in this morning at 24th and Wolf Streets. He will be held without bail on the first-degree murder charge. At least that's what we expect, just like every defendant who's charged with first-degree murder in Philadelphia County. There are limits to additional comment that we can or should make on this case. It is now a pending criminal matter, and we feel that it is not only essential to the fairness of the process, but also essential to the possibility of any additional investigative information, that we not get too deeply into details. Nevertheless, I am here today not only on my own, but I'm here today with the two attorneys who have been instrumental in the careful development of information around this case. They are, to my left, Tracy Tripp, who is the chief of our Special Investigations Unit, and to my right, Vincent, aka Vinny Corrigan, who has been most directly involved in the handling of this matter. Are there any questions for me or for them in relation to this case?
Why was Plowden fleeing from police?
Mr. Corrigan?
We don't know because he's not able to tell us.
But he had another passenger in the car, so is there any indication what the passenger may have indicated why he was fleeing from police?
The passenger did testify to the grand jury, but people who testify to the grand jury do so in secret. Their testimony remains secret for the most part. Certainly at this point it is, so it would be illegal for me to tell you what that witness or any other witness said to the grand jury.
So what sparked the chase in the first, or the initial stop of Mr. Plowden? Was there some link they thought he had to a murder, we understand, or was that something that was totally not relevant?
They called the number into the police, to the police radio to stop a mover, which is police slang for any moving vehicle. There's no information on the police radio before the incident that indicates that anyone knew for sure that this vehicle may have been involved in a homicide. It's my understanding since that this is not an avenue of inquiry. The homicide in question is still an open case. But my understanding at this point is that this vehicle is not a line of inquiry that they're pursuing at all.
Were they watching Plowden, or forgive me if I don't know the fact. Were they watching Plowden, or was it part of a narcotics investigation or anything? I may be lost here.
No.
So this was just the police officers saw the car, they called in the plate randomly. That's how it went down?
The police radio, they called in the plate, the police radio, they received back the information that the district attorney gave. The vehicle driven by Mr. Plowden pulled over because the police vehicles involved, although they're not marked police vehicles, they do have sirens and lights on the inside, so they look like regular cars at a glance, but if you look at them with any kind of concentration, you can see that they're not. So he was pulled over initially by a vehicle using lights and sirens, and a second vehicle arrived to cut him off, and at that point, he drove away.
Was the vehicle registered to Plowden?
No.
Who was it registered to?
That's in the presentment. The person to whom the vehicle was registered is just named by his initials.
And did no other officers fire their weapon? Just Officer Ruch, that you know of, fired their weapon?
That's correct. Nobody else fired.
Why did it take 3 years to recommend charges?
It didn't take 3 years, and there were a number of logistical issues involving grand juries and things of that nature. And obviously the last 8 months, 6, 7, 8 months, when we couldn't do anything at all. So total, I would say, this actual active investigation, probably about 12 months.
Can you comment on Mr. Officer Ruch? Krasner said that he had been fired by the former police commissioner Ross in 2018. Is that right? And what was that? Do you know the circumstances surrounding that, or can you elaborate on that? Was it in reference
Do you have that
to
thing?
this case? Was it in reference to this case?
Yes, it was in reference. All I know it was in reference to this case. I don't know anything else about it. It's an internal police affair and nothing to do with the criminal investigation.
Did the suspect or victim have a history of criminal offenses, and did the officer have a history of misconduct or anything like that?
It's appropriate to comment.
Yeah, so Mr. Corrigan's boss is gonna step in and politely say that we're not gonna talk about that at this time. As you guys know, part of our job as prosecutors is to ensure due process for everyone. And I think any commentary on things that are extraneous to the facts of the case and the facts on which the grand jury based their presentment does a disservice to the case and all parties involved.
What message would you have for Plowden's family?
What message would I have for them? Well, the criminal justice system doesn't move as quickly as people like, but it does move. And that I hope they take some comfort from this, although essentially this is just the beginning of the process, because we have to go through the criminal process itself beyond the investigation of the grand jury.
Did Brooks have any serious disciplinary record that you guys were aware of in this investigation?
Again, you're asking us to comment on things which are not appropriate to comment on at this time, so I'm not going to comment on that.
I have a question for District Attorney. Sir, there's been an outcry of protest of police brutality and shootings and throughout other cities in the United States. What do you have to say to Philadelphians who are going to see this story and hear it, and to ease their mind that the District Attorney's office is on it?
You know, what I can say is that I guess what we always say and what we truly mean, which is that we are trying to be fair. And trying to be fair means you are trying to be fair to marginalized people. You're trying to be fair to powerful people. You're trying to be fair to people who hold a position of public trust. And you're trying to be fair to people who hold absolutely nothing in their hands. We are trying to be fair. And that is the only way that we're going to succeed in restoring the relationship between communities that are sometimes distrustful of law enforcement and the law enforcement, including this office, that is supposed to serve them. Are there any other questions? I am going to invite SIU Chief Tracy Tripp to see if she has any additional comments, but are there any other questions at this time?
Could you give an update on the Ryan Liddell case, the previous officer involved shooting and charged by your
Tracy, would you like to do that?
Sorry. You would like an update. So right now, we are scheduled for a trial date April 12th in front of the Honorable Barbara McDermott. It is my understanding that our Superior Court appeal regarding the jury instructions and Section 508 of the Crimes Code, which covers a specific statute around self-defense for law enforcement, that appeal to the Superior Court was quashed by the Superior Court, and our law division did indeed file for aliquotter before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. So, two things are happening. One, our initial appeal of the jury instructions and statute is on its appeal track to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. We'll see what they say. If they accept the case, they accept the case. If they don't, we have a trial date for April 12th in front of Judge McDermott, and we will be ready for that.
Now, I do have one question. If the officer in this case is convicted of all the charges, what's the maximum sentence?
The maximum sentence for first-degree murder is life without parole.
How long has he been a Philadelphia police officer?
Off the top of my head, I'm not really sure. I wouldn't want, somewhere in the 7 to 10 year range, I believe.
What was his rank?
It's a police officer.
Are there any final questions? I do want to add one point, just so that you're all aware. Because this case is pending, even though there certainly are interesting facts we could talk about, having to do with, for example, questions about the prior record of the officer or questions about the prior record of the decedent who was killed in this case, it is important that we not prejudice any jury that may hear it or any judge that may hear it. We do not try to win our cases in the press. We try to win our cases in a courtroom. We take that obligation very seriously. In addition, if we think about a case like the George Floyd case, that is a case where you have a video that captures a lot of what happened and exactly how it happened. And what we find in general in cases where police accountability is at issue is where we have video evidence or very strong evidence, you can move more swiftly because you don't have to piece together from eyewitness testimony and other sorts of less perfect sources of information. So it is more time consuming always when you have to look at a case where we do not have video that is focused on the crucial moment in the case. And therefore, we have tried to be as careful as our duty requires to be fair to everyone and to sift the evidence carefully. I believe and hope that we have done that, and I certainly am grateful to the grand jury for its service. If there are no other questions, yes, please.
Sorry, so at this point, you continue at least, so there has been no video that captured the actual shooting? Obviously, you referenced video of the block here that you used. Is there no video that would capture this?
I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that the most crucial aspects of it, that kind of vivid, up close, clear video that you saw, for example, for nearly all of the incident involving George Floyd, that is of a higher quality than what's available here. Are there any other questions?
Yes, has instances like the George Floyd shooting, has that influenced at all how you approach some of these cases, like this one?
I mean, the answer is no, certainly in terms of what I have done. I cannot tell you whether it's had any effect on how members of a grand jury think about these issues, but I think it's pretty clear from our record in this office that we have been willing, when the evidence is there and the law is there, to try to hold everyone accountable, including police officers who have shot people on duty, police officers who have hit people with batons on duty or have used OC spray or other types of pepper spray on duty. I also think, honestly, it's pretty clear from a long career that even-handed accountability and even-handed justice system are issues that we knew about and cared about long before the terrible thing that happened to George Floyd happened. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you all very much.
There is no video, absolutely no video.
No, there's some video of the car chase.